Stephanie Madam St Clair, also known as Queenie. Queenie was born in 1886 on December 24th in Guadeloupe. She was only 15 years old when she had her first job. She was hired to be a maid by a very wealthy family where she was raped repeatedly by their son. Stephanie saved up enough money and fled to France. Later, she arrived in New York in 1912. Queenie was never soft, a punk, or a pushover. A man named Duke was the love of her life, and he tried to prostitute her. She stabbed Duke in the eye with a fork, and she left New York on a bus. The very next day, the bus was stopped by the KKK, and black passengers were beaten, raped, hung, and set on fire. Stephanie was gang raped by the KKK. She returned to New York and found a new love of her life named Ed. I've read many books and done a lot of research, but it's unclear how she came up with $10,000. Somehow she managed to come up with the money, and she wanted to start a business. Ed didn't want to start the business with the money, so she wanted to leave Ed. Stephanie and Ed get into a fight. She pushed Ed after Ed tried to strangle her, and Ed cracked his skull on the table, and Ed died from his injuries. Stephanie was ready to get into the male-dominated numbers game. Once she got in the game, she rolls fast. Stephanie started making over $20,000 a year, which was a lot of money in the 1920s. Then she skyrocketed to over $200,000 a year. She hired Bumpy Johnson as her personal bodyguard in 1924. Bumpy escorted her to classical concerts, jazz nightclubs, and wherever else. In some books, they say the two was actually sleeping together. Stephanie started killing the numbers game. Then here came Dutch Shultz. Dutch Shultz came in and hired the #1 enforcer in Harlem at the time, a man by the name of Bub Hewlett. You see, Bub was the man before Bumpy. Go back to my first documentary on Bumpy Johnson and listen to what I said about Bub. Now let me take you back to when the two first met. There was a new grocery store opening up on 7th Avenue near 148th Street. Bub approached the store owner and offered his protection services. To his surprise, the store owner said he already had protection. Bub said, "Who?" Then the store owner pointed to Bumpy, who was leaning on Bub's black Lincoln at the time with his arms crossed, staring at Bub through the window. Bub laughed and said, "This little nigga right here?" Bub went outside and yelled at Bumpy, "Get up off my car, little nigga. Do you know who I am?" Bumpy said, "Yeah, I know who you are. You Bub Hewlett." Then Bumpy stood up off of his car and said, "I'm off of your car now. Now get up off my block." Bub said, "How the hell is this your block?" Bumpy said, "Because me and my boys claimed it. You and your crew got the rest of Harlem. Now let us have this store." Bub smiled and gave him a nod. Later on, Bub became Bumpy's mentor. Bub was his man. Bumpy and Bub put in a lot of work together in Harlem. Now back to the story. Fast forward a decade and some change later. Dutch Schultz knew hiring Bub would give him a lot of strength in Harlem. Bub approached Queenie and told her to surrender. Queenie said no. Around this time, Bumpy was locked up, and Dutch started lighting up all of her number spots. In 1932, Bumpy got out of prison and Bub asked his buddy to come work for him. Bub and these dudes was getting paid about $600 a week. That was a lot of bread in the 20s and 30s. Bumpy told Bud he'd think about it and he'd get back to him. Bub may have been vicious everywhere else, but he tried his best to keep peace with Bumpy and Queenie. He begged them to just hear the Dutch out. Queenie declined. Bumpy told Bub, "You're on the wrong side of this, man." Contrary to the movie Hoodlum, Bumpy and Bub never went to war with each other. Bub was arrested on kidnapping and attempt murder shortly after this. And the last contact the two had with each other, they were sipping ginger ale in Small's Paradise. In 1932, Dutch offered a friend named Catherine Oldham $500 to lure Queenie into her apartment so she can shoot her. Oldham went back and told Queenie what happened. What finally got the Dutch killed was after a meeting he had with the commission. Dutch wanted a prosecutor killed named Thomas Dewey. The commission said no, because it'll bring too much heat on the mafia. Dutch stormed out and said he'd do it himself. At 10:30 p.m. on October 23rd in 1935, Dutch was gunned down by two members of Murder Inc. in the ballroom of Palace Chop House. Bumpy always protected Harlem. Bumpy was close with many militant blacks and many black leaders. Malcolm was a close friend of Bumpy. Again, watch my first documentary on Bumpy Johnson and Malcolm X. Bumpy was close with Leroy Jones, also known as Amiri Baraka, Stokely Carmichael, Max Stanford. He was the man who introduced Harlem to the Panthers, who also later formed RAM, Revolutionary Action Movement. Bumpy was good with athletes, actors, musicians. Speaking of entertainers, According to Bumpy's wife, Mamie Johnson, one time Bumpy came to the house with Lena Horne. Mamie said she was a huge Lena Horne fan. In this era, Lena Horne was a Beyonce type of figure. Bumpy came in and said, "Look who I found outside." So the two come in, they sit down, they start having dinner. Lena made a comment that alarmed Mamie. Lena said, "Bumpy, I left my scarf down at the racetrack." Mamie knew that this was one of Bumpy's favorite hangout spots, where he liked to gamble and just hang out. Mamie said after that, she knew something was going on with the two. She was never a Lena Horne fan after that. Contrary to what many believe, Bumpy was never this kingpin drug dealer. Bumpy had 2 drug cases. The first case he was caught was due to a man named Flash. Flash was a younger man who Bumpy took under his wing. Bumpy never had a son, so Bumpy saw a son in Flash, and Bumpy loved him as a son. This was until Flash Walker started touching on Bumpy's 16-year-old daughter. Bumpy found out, and Bumpy beat him to a bloody pulp. Flash planted heroin underneath Bumpy's sofa and tipped off detectives. Bumpy was known as a gangster and a gentleman. You couldn't smoke or use profanity around women and kids in front of Bumpy. He once beat a man unconscious for refusing to stop profanity around women. He gave the man several warnings, and the man continued and blew smoke in his face. After Bumpy beat him bloody, Bumpy stood up, fixed his tie, and said, "I'm in the mood for some spaghetti and meatballs." Thanks for watching. Make sure you hit the thumbs up, make sure you subscribe, and I'm gonna keep the videos coming.
Hey, Pops, keep that beat a-beating. I feel a rhythmic brainstorm coming on. 1, 2, keep that rhythm heating. One more riff like that and I'll be gone. Oh, man, don't stop now, we're jumping. Give everything to Lord now. This thing might turn into something. I ain't mistaken, here comes something now.